Hello, all. Happy Monday. I was going to apologize for looking like a hot mess, but then I determined I don't look as bad as I feel. Little bit, too much to do today. The sucky thing about having videos up for Monday and recording them in advance is I have to do them on Sunday, and this Sunday was a bit hairy. I only get one full day off a week. Just give me a break. And that's an improvement. You guys know who've been watching this channel for a long time. One day off is pretty disciplined for me. And speaking of discipline, I have been talking to my patrons who are wonderful and very supportive and about my goal of trying to double the amount of Patreon support I get in a year. Why? Because it is the least compromising form of financial model that I have found so far. I've been thinking about this and how to make this channel more profitable, and I think that's the best way because then I can continue to focus on the quality of the content instead of chasing clicks and sponsors and things like that, and can continue to keep not just the quality of the content in the video, but the quality of the community surrounding these videos high. The best way to do that is to just have more Patreon support. Now, one of the things that the patrons said, and they're right, I'm bad at this, is I need to mention the Patreon more in these videos, directly in these videos. And one person said, some people put a slate on. I know that might be more editing. I realized, no, it's not more editing. I can put it right in the videos on OBS. Ta-da, here we go. Please help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com, Leanna K. You can click the link in the description box below. This is the main source of funding for this channel. There was a Lady Bits Kickstarter, but that's over and above the Patreon support. So please, we got past that burp with the additional stuff. There are going to be more things rolling out to try to drive people to become patrons. There have been some really good ideas, but we're starting here. I'm going to do it again. Become a monthly patron. Right now, it's just $1 a month. Just $1 a month gets you access to the Thursday videos and the sneak previews, seeing Lady Bits early, all that good stuff. So please, please, please become a patron today. Yeah. And today is actually a follow-up from Feedback Friday, which was a follow-up from, I think, Wednesday's video. It started with the Me Too thing, and then people asked me to talk about the Golden Globes, and then there was a discussion on Twitter about the whole, I don't like calling it a pay gap thing, because it's not a pay gap. I'm trying to be careful talking about this. I tried to be really clear that the issue for me was not that it was a discrepancy in salaries, because it's not a discrepancy in salaries. And that seems to be sort of the first thing people want to argue, is that this is a pay gap thing. In fairness, it was presented by the media as a pay gap thing, and it's not. It was a condition of the contract that Mark Wahlberg got to approve any cast changes. Those, I guess, are not very understood, those contract clauses. Those are put in to contracts because people sign on to a film based on the fact that they like the cast. If the cast then changes, they can end up going from a really good movie that they think will do well, and you know, there are certain conditions for people to sign up for films, especially films like this, where an action star like Mark Wahlberg obviously takes less of a fee than he is used to be on a better quality product that might get him some critical acclaim. Because of that, there is a stipulation that they get to approve any casting changes. And then his agent leveraged a $1.5 million payday from this because of the Kevin Spacey replacement. It is not about reshoots. Michelle Williams and Mark Wahlberg were both paid as part of their initial fees for 2 weeks of reshoots, and the reshoots to replace Kevin Spacey took 10 days. So it's not about being paid for their work. They had already been paid for their work. It was part of the initial deal. This was a particular clause in the contract that Wahlberg's agent decided to approach in that particular way. Well, the people have spoken, for lack of a better term, and Mark Wahlberg donated, and even this is wrong. It's not a reshoot salary. Vanity Fair, get it right. Get it right. It wasn't a reshoot fee. It was basically a ransom payment so they could reshoot these scenes with a new actor. That's what it was. Shame on Vanity Fair. It's just, this is the problem with news. And all these CNN, did CNN get it wrong too? That'd be really interesting. Sorry guys, I'm digressing here, but let's see here. Don't do a rollover, CNN. Screw you. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, you guys can't see it. There we go. So the headline is Mark Wahlberg says he'll donate $1.5 million in Michelle Williams' name. More on that in a bit. But Mark Wahlberg is donating $1.5 million to the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund in co-star Michelle Williams' name. The donation comes in response to criticisms over a gender pay gap for reshoots of the movie All the Money in the World. Wahlberg was paid $1.5 million for the research while research shoots. Oh God, can't talk. Well, Williams made just around $1,000 or $80 a day. Over the last few days, my reshoot fee, notice he calls it a reshoot fee, not a salary, because it wasn't a salary. Over the last few days, my reshoot fee for All the Money in the World has become an important topic of conversation, Wahlberg said in a statement. I 100% support the right for fair pay, and I'm donating the $1.5 million to the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund in Michelle Williams' name. William Morris Endeavor Entertainment, the talent agency that represents both Wahlberg and Williams, also announced it would be making a $500,000 donation to the fund, again in Williams' name. The organization had already donated $1 million to the fund earlier this month. And Michelle Williams is reportedly supportive of the decision. If we truly envision an equal world, it takes equal effort and sacrifice, Williams' statement read in part. Today is one of the most indelible days of my life because of Mark Wahlberg, WMA is William Morris Endeavor, and a community of women and men who share in this accomplishment. Anthony Rapp, for all the shoulders you stood on, now we stand on yours. Rapp, who appears on CBS's Star Trek Discovery, alleged in a BuzzFeed story published in late October that Spacey made a sexual advance toward him at a party in 1986. It was a little more than that, but CNN is going for shorthand. Rapp was 14 years old at the time. Spacey issued who cares about Kevin Spacey? As a result of Rapp's allegations and others, director Ridley Scott decided to reshoot scenes from All the Money in the World that included Spacey. The Time's Up Fund was established to subsidize legal support to people who have dealt with sexual harassment in the workplace. It's administered by the National Women's Law Center. After news of the pay difference between William and Wahlberg became public, many cited as a prime example of the gender pay gap prevalent in Hollywood and other industries. So the CNN article is not directly inaccurate because it doesn't use the word salary. You don't get salaries in Hollywood. I wish they'd stop saying this. It's contract work. You get fees. This is not the same as a janitor making a lot more money than a housekeeper just because of the name of the job. This is not about salaries or sort of like versus like. It's not a yearly pay. It's more the equivalent of what somebody who does, a job on your house, a roofer or a plumber or something like that. They quote you the price. They agree to pay the price. Vanity Fair was completely wrong for calling it a salary. So I'm not even going to link to that article. Boom, poo-poo. I just didn't want to use CNN as a source at first, but CNN did it better at this point. I'm really surprised, though. I guess it shouldn't be. But it's important to understand the details of this story, because whether people are being paid fairly compensated for what they bring to the table is important. The underlying causes of you guys know I don't say the pay gap. I say a series of pay gaps, because it is very different. I've been diving back into this because of Lady Bits, and there are different pay gaps based on earning bracket. There are different pay gaps based on, women of color tend to make significantly less money than white women. So there's a pay gap among women based on race, or a series of pay gaps because it's different for African American women or black women, as we say up here, and Latino women, and there's no pay gap for Asian women. So when we say the pay gap, it is a misnomer. We are talking about a series of gaps based on a lot of intersecting phenomena. And it's interesting because the pay gap among low-wage workers, people making minimum wage, is only 10 cents compared to this 78 cents. I mean, why would it be 10 cents if everybody's making minimum wage? Because they tend to be hourly workers, and but it's a smaller gap because of minimum wage, because there's sort of an enforced floor. So if you're making the bare minimum, women making the bare minimum make almost as much as men making the bare minimum per year. Obviously, per hour, they're making the exact same amount. Now, there are certain things that go into, if you're on a health insurance plan. I mean, most people on minimum wage don't have health insurance through their workplace, but there's little things here and there. It's funny because the graph kind of goes, it drops precipitously once you start making above minimum wage. The minute you make above minimum wage, it drops fairly quickly from about 10 cents an hour gap to about 20 cents an hour gap. Then it kind of goes up again when you slightly make more than $50,000 a year, and then it plummets. So very wealthy women, which are a relatively small percent of the population, make a lot less money than very wealthy men. You know, the top 10%, the top 5%, the top 1%. We like to talk about the 1%, but we see a sharp decrease, meaning super wealthy women tend to not make as much money as the super wealthy men. Who cares? They're all filthy stinking rich. By the time you hit those margins, money doesn't mean anything to people. It certainly doesn't mean the same thing. Money becomes something of a game. Like, oh, I lost $50,000 today. I had fun. Like, you hear them talk this way. I have been in meetings with stuff like this. I've heard these discussions. This is not what we're talking about, right? We are talking about two things. We are talking about the inherent fairness of fair pay for fair work. That's one big thing about the pay gap. And then, or the pay gaps. And then we want to see if there are actually issues in the workplace, biases in the workplace that are making it impossible for women to actually negotiate for more money so that they can make as much as men. And in those middle income, the average income, $50,000 a year to around $75,000 a year, they're actually finding that, yeah, there are issues. Even more, I mean, people tend to think, oh, big deal 10%, oh, big deal 3%. Over your lifetime, that's a lot of money. And it seems to be, and this is why I'm very interested in people's reactions to this Mark Wahlberg, Michelle Williams story. There seems to be this idea that men have to be prepared to give up money so that women can be paid the same as them. This is terrible messaging. I'm bringing this up because this is basically what Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon said at the Golden Globes. That, these men have agreed to give up half their salaries so women can be paid fairly. If the job is worth what men are getting, that's what the job is worth. It's not a question that men are being overpaid for their work. It's that women are being underpaid. It is a losing argument to claim that men should lose out so that they can be equal to women. That's a terrible argument. these companies, these movies are making millions and millions and billions of dollars. Or, as the president of the U.S. says, billions and billions of dollars, one of his favorite words in the whole world. But they're making billions. So pay people, just pay people more. It's crazy to me because I know that people went to see Wonder Woman and this is the thing, when you get into Hollywood, the whole thing becomes a big, giant freaking mess. Hollywood is not the industry to take on the pay gaps. It just isn't. It isn't, because there's too many variables. There's nothing about Hollywood that, if you go to an office, say the William Morris Endeavor Agency, which is in a great big building in Beverly Hills, I've been in it. If you go there are people who answer the phones. There are agents' assistants. There are, people working on salaries in that building. The agents don't work on a salary. They take a percentage of the commission that their clients make. Now, if you want to look at pay discrepancies among assistants who are salaried at that company, okay, then we're talking about fair pay for fair day's work, whatever. Although I suspect that there are probably bonuses if you work for one of the top agents, you make more at the end of the year. Bonuses are one of those things. But base salary, we could look at that. But you can't even look at what an agent's making, because how do I put this? In Hollywood, you are only worth as much as everybody kind of agrees you're worth that day. That's it. There's no merit. There's no fairness to it. And then you start getting into this discussion of negotiation. And there's some merit to that argument. And that's why I want to be very clear what happened in this Mark Wahlberg, Michelle Williams case. Because it was not about salary. It was not about them being paid for their work. I 100% agree that people should be paid a fair amount for what they're worth. Now, I think Mark Wahlberg's worth to this picture is being completely overvalued. I actually think he's a detriment. Part of the reason I didn't see it is it was like, when it originally came out, Kevin Spacey and Mark Wahlberg, no thanks. I've seen enough of those guys. Michelle Williams, I think she's a good actress, but 1 out of 3? A guy like Wahlberg is actually a drain on a picture like this. I wonder who they approached before him. But Mark Wahlberg also has a notoriously aggressive agent. And this is why the donation that the William Morris Endeavor Agency made, I'll remind you again, that $500,000 donation to the fund after they'd already donated $1 million to the fund. That's a real indication that the agency recognizes that what they did was bad for business. It is possible for an agent in Hollywood to be too aggressive. And this is an example of an agent being too aggressive and actually creating bad PR for their client. Optics matter in Hollywood because it's an industry based on optics. They make movies. It's all about how stuff looks. And Mark Wahlberg especially sort of built up this reputation, this public persona. That's a better term, persona. Of, he's that guy on Wahlburgers who brings his friends along. What's his name? Turtle was the guy's name on Entourage, the character that's based on. I don't remember. Hamster or something like that. The cuddly guy. I like him, but he doesn't have a lot of skills. If he wasn't Mark Wahlberg's friend, we've had no idea who he is. And then there's another guy. What's that name? Johnny Drama, who basically, episode after episode after episode of that show, I don't know if it was Wahlburgers or there's another reality show. I can't keep them all straight. I'm not the biggest reality TV fan, but I saw the show because I like the Wahlberg family. I find their show entertaining. But that guy Johnny Drama, who basically only gets these auditions because he's Mark Wahlberg's friend and the producers have set it up, and he's constantly complaining and is a big pain in the ass, hence his name is Johnny Drama. These guys would be nowhere were he not Mark Wahlberg's friend. Mark Wahlberg has not exactly created a brand where it's every man for himself and you get what you can get. He gives his friends these spots in his entourage because he grew up poor and recognizes that he only became famous because his brother Donnie hit it big on New Kids on the Block. Like, remember back in the day, this was when I was a kid. New Kids on the Block was big. And then there was Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. And they were basically a one-hit wonder that sampled Good Vibrations. And that was the big hook. And then he did like this popcorn rap over the sample of the Good Vibration song. Oh no, it was re-recorded. There was a lady. Like, the lady did all the work. The lady is such a good vibration. It's such a sweet sensation. You know that one? And then he did the feel it. But everybody sings the lady part. Nobody does the rap. The hook was this sample, this feature. Before feature artists were credited, it was going on the Marky Mark of the Funky Bunch album. I guess she was the Funky Bunch. But it was Marky Mark who was the name. And then he went into movies and got very, very lucky and got attached to, the Transformers franchise. And so he's made a lot of money running around while CGI explosions happen in the background. And I talked about before the idea that he's doing films like All the Money in the World to try to build up his rep because he's not going to be able to do the action films anymore. And whether a performer in Hollywood can successfully transition from action star to, art house flick serious actor so you can continue to act, it's very dicey. Not everybody can effectively do it. Guys like Elijah Wood and Daniel Radcliffe have been fairly successful. Elijah Wood does these weird shows like, Dirk Gently. And what was that one where the guy, a bunny? And, he had a supporting part in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And he's moved on. I mean, he played that cannibal guy, Kevin, in Sin City and stuff like that. He's moved on. He's had kind of a second career as a quirky kind of indie actor because he made some pretty conscious choices that it's like, look, I'm going to be making money from Lord of the Rings for the rest of my life. I don't want to get Luke Skywalkered. I don't want people to only see me as that. I want to be able to continue to make movies because it's fun. So I'm going to do other things and not be difficult about it. And this is where I'm going. This is where all this is set up. It's the not be difficult about it. Because when you start getting into movies like All the Money in the World, these are actors' films. You do not sign up for these films for a big fat payday. You don't. They're to show what you can do. Because the sort of actor who makes those movies, they continue to work and they're in demand and they make little bits of money. It's not, I'm going to make $20 million every 2 years. It's a completely different career model. You get good material. You get respect. You can be part of projects you believe in. When you are hanging a production out to dry, when you are saying, I have cast approval and I'm not going to approve this cast change until you pay me, which is what his agent did. You don't get asked. You don't get the scripts anymore. You don't get the opportunity to be part of these sorts of movies like All the Money in the World. You don't get to work with actresses like Michelle Williams, So the agent actually did not long term advocate in the best interests of their client. And this is the thing about all these people justifying what Mark Wahlberg did of negotiations, you always ask for as much money. That is the ugly elements of Hollywood that allowed guys like Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, people like that to continue acting badly because people were like, it's none of our business. It's the business of making money. Weinstein got this reputation inaccurately as being somebody who could pick winners on the Oscar circuit. Not totally true. He had as many like just downright flop movies, just bad movies as successes, but reputations get built in funny ways in Hollywood. That was why he was able, and people don't understand this. And I get it, guys. I get why it seems so strange that all these millionaires would suck up to other millionaires. Like the way we think it's like they don't need the money. Why would they do that? Because remember I said that when people hit a certain wealth, money doesn't mean the same thing anymore. It's not about money. It's about in-group, out-group dynamics. If somebody's in the in-group, you're nice to them even though you can't stand them. It's just habit. You know, remember when that executive, what was it, Amy Pascal or something like that, just dragged Angelina Jolie in those Sony emails, and Angelina Jolie was like, it happens. That's the game. You're gracious. When you're in public with everything, you just act nice. You act like nothing happened. Oh, like, you know, everybody, hi, Richard Gere. Yeah, you hear that one about him and the gerbil? Yeah, you know, there's a reason things don't go away. So if you're at the top of your game, if you're making money for somebody, you're in the in-group and everybody acts like you're their best friend. The minute something like a Weinstein scandal happens or something like a Kevin Spacey scandal happens, everybody runs for the exits. All of a sudden, you are a pariah. No one will take your calls. Now, that can happen in an instant. And it's definitely not fair because it's just all about perception. Remember I said Hollywood's all about how much people think you're worth today. So if, say, and I'll use this example because people brought it up and I may get into trouble for this, but say Oprah snubs Harvey Weinstein at a dinner at the Oscars or something like that, because there's that picture of Oprah kissing Harvey Weinstein on the cheek. You know, let's not touch that one. Let's use something more simple. The case of the movie Grindhouse, okay, which was a Robert Rodriguez, Quentin Tarantino team up that was supposed to be about old B movies. Robert Rodriguez decided to cast Rose McGowan in Grindhouse, in his, was it Planet Terror? Portion. Now, I don't know if you guys followed this, but at the time I couldn't figure out what's going on. Because Grindhouse was this really fun, funny B movie, and then there was Machete in the middle, but Rose McGowan was great as that I want to be a stand-up comedian and she only has one leg and it ends up with a gun, and amazing. Robert Rodriguez does that stuff very, very well, and Rose McGowan was great. She was great in that part. But Quentin Tarantino's, what was it, Death Proof? It was Kurt Russell in this car, and the ending of that film, this whole scene was a direct ripoff. If you guys saw it, there were 3 women punching Kurt Russell in a triangle. It was a complete ripoff of a martial arts film. I believe it was called Three Sisters. That's what Quentin Tarantino does. He copies scenes whole cloth without attribution from Hong Kong martial arts films. It was a straight up copy. There was nothing new to it. He was just copying it. And what they ended up doing, because Weinstein was mad that Rodriguez cast Rose McGowan because Rose McGowan was on Harvey Weinstein's shit list because she was trying to say Harvey Weinstein raped me even back then. She was actively telling people. Robert Rodriguez knew. That's why there was apparently a whole conversation with Rose McGowan about, well, why didn't you, because she said, I really like Sin City. Well, why didn't you read for it? Well, it's a Weinstein film. I'm never going to get cast. He said, I'm going to cast you. Screw Harvey. Well, they took Death Proof, which was the Quentin Tarantino film, split it from Planet Terror because somebody somewhere somehow, Harvey Weinstein, said, nah, Planet Terror's no good, Death Proof. The movie with entire scenes just directly copied from Hong Kong martial arts films. That was art. It was art. Planet Terror was just schlock. So we're going to split the two because Planet Terror is no good. We're going to take Death Proof to Cannes. And it was lauded and so brilliant. Copied. Complete scenes copied. The movie was lauded as this brilliant thing. And I was sitting here going, what's going on? I don't get it. Well, that was straight up full-blown retribution for hiring Rose McGowan. And that's the thing where I said I don't want to bring up Oprah, but don't forget, Oprah occasionally does movies. And Oprah has friends that do movies. And a guy like Harvey Weinstein, if you're not nice to him, even if he can't touch you, he'll go after your friends. He'll go after anyone who hires you. He will make you a pariah. And that's why people are nice to him, because, you know, Oprah's probably going, I don't want him taking this out on Gayle King or, you know, all the other people whose careers I've kind of launched. If they want opportunities, I don't want him punishing them for, you know, so everybody nicey, everybody plays nice, and then everybody gets in their corners and they warn each other off. The problem with being warned off is people have to work. So even though they hear the warnings, it's like, this is the business. I have to do it. I don't have any other options. And that's why there's been this upheaval. That's why things are so crazy right now. That's why Hollywood specifically has had such a strong response to this. And everybody has to, you know, it's like Michelle Williams said, if we truly envision an equal world, I'm reading from the screen again, I should probably just show it again. If we truly envision an equal world, it takes equal effort and sacrifice. So that means guys like Mark Wahlberg's agent can't be seeking out a payday for his client because they have to reshoot scenes of a movie because Kevin Spacey abused a 14-year-old, and not just one. That's the thing. And this goes back to my original response to the whole thing, that it wasn't a pay gap issue at all. It's not a pay gap issue. Because talking about the pay gap in Hollywood, it's really hard to care. I get it. It's really hard to care if millionaires make more millions or less millions. They're still millionaires. Like, they'll see more money than most of us ever dream of. It's a question of the reason that payday, that secondary payday opened up for Mark Wahlberg was because there was social pariah status, you know, on Kevin Spacey. But why? Because he very likely abused a kid. Focus camera. Multiple kids. Long track record of abused kids, right? Boys. 14, 15, 16-year-old boys, guys. The whole point of this Time's Up movement, the whole point of the Me Too and all this stuff is so industries stop being so cutthroat that they look the other way when this is happening, because it's all about money. And when you're holding up a production to get $1.5 million so you can reshoot scenes with a guy who tried to screw 14-year-old boys, that isn't enlightened self-interest. That's not greater good. It's just greed. And this is precisely the thing that Hollywood is claiming these days are over. Time's up. This is what time's supposed to be up about. And they know internally that the reason Weinstein and Spacey, and there's Weinstein and Spacey and then there's everybody else, let's be fair. But, James Franco is taking some heat about some things. I think he will survive it for various reasons, fair or not. Dustin Hoffman is being dogged by accusations, but none of these are on the level of Harvey Weinstein or a Kevin Spacey or a James, what's his name? James Toback, Brett Ratner, the serial predations of some of these men. And they're men now. More on this in a later video. But the reason it's time's up is because they know it's an industry-wide problem, which means it isn't just the Kevin Spaceys and Harvey Weinsteins of the world that it need to get a time's up. It's agents at William Morris Endeavor who see the sexual abuse of young men as a reason to say pay up. No. I have said last week, that this does a disservice. Michelle Williams did the right thing. I've had people bombarding my Facebook page with the woman made a choice. Yeah, she made a choice to be a human being instead of a greedy pig. And she's being rewarded for that by her industry. Now, the thing about this is Mark Wahlberg still gets the tax receipt from the donation. And this is where it starts getting squicky. They say he made the donation in her name, but all that means is that, it's in honor of. I do it all the time. I make donations to various organizations in the name of someone affected by a particular disease or somebody I think is cool as a gift. But I get the tax receipt. They don't get the tax receipt. I get the tax receipt. I am still making the donation. So at the end of the day, these companies still get a pretty hefty tax cut. Hollywood. And this is why I say structurally the underpinnings, they still don't get it in their brains. They still don't get it in their brains. Now, I think, notice I keep saying William Morris Endeavor instead of Mark Wahlberg. I think I know how this goes. Guys like Mark Wahlberg, they don't like the negotiation process. So it's just like, work it out. Let me know how it is. And I can guarantee you the phone call was something like, well, you've got approval. You've got approval over this cast. Is Christopher Plummer okay? Yeah, Christopher Plummer's okay. All right, I'll get back to you. They offered you $1.5 million to approve Christopher Plummer. Okay. The agent doesn't tell you the agent was the one that pushed. So, unfortunately, Mark Wahlberg's name is on this brand. But if I were Mark Wahlberg, I would get a new agent. And I think that the additional $500,000 that William Morris Endeavor is donating to Time's Up was probably to keep Wahlberg as a client because they're the ones that brought this bad PR down on him. And you have to remember, since Mark Wahlberg is somebody who's made a lot of money, being worth a certain amount as far as Hollywood agrees on he's worth today, now he's worth a lot less because of the mistakes of his agent. It's live by the sword, die by the sword. So defending Mark Wahlberg here does no good. All these guys who said he negotiated, she didn't. There's more to career longevity in Hollywood than making as much money as you can every single film. And I hope that this video put more context into it. So I'm going to wrap here. Like I said, I'm going to talk more about certain things because I've got some interesting tips from people about some of the stuff that's going on more on the journalism side. But that's a video for another day. I have to go make food for the week right now, because what I do is I batch cook and then, okay, there's stuff to reheat for the rest of the week. But please help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com, Leanna K. Click the link in the description box below. $1 a month. That's it. If 300 more people sign up, I will double my number of patrons. If, people decide to be generous, and there will be incentives. There will be incentives coming for giving more on a monthly basis. But I really do appreciate every bit of support you guys give. It allows me to not worry about whether a sponsor is going to drop me if I talk about a specific topic. And trust me, I hear from people who make a lot more money on YouTube than I do, but they have to constantly worry about sponsor blowback. I don't want to have to avoid difficult topics. And of course, every time I talk about a difficult topic, I lose, the first 1,000 minimum views on ads, which isn't a lot, but it's the principle of the thing. Like, I keep losing YouTube revenue because of the subjects I choose to talk about. So please become a patron. It is worth it. Trust me, you are helping not just me allowed to make videos, you are helping sustain a community on the internet where we can actually have discussions with each other without it devolving into a raging shit show. That's what you're paying for, right? Right. Okay. Thanks, guys.